Okay, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a wonderfully relaxing Friday. This is Smudcast number 853. Why sci-fi and fantasy can't fix its white savior problem. All in capital letters there of every word. I had no idea there was a white savior problem or if the trope is inherently bad. So if you guys...
Of course, it's just like the man savior is bad.
Yeah, if you guys don't know what the white savior or the white man's burden trope is, essentially some privileged white person comes into a story and they help the minority, the black guy, the Indian, whatever the story may be, because they're wise in the world and they have empathy or something like that.
Can you give an example?
I was going to say Dances with Wolves, maybe.
I thought that was a cross-cultural story about people from different walks of life coming together, and then things happen and good stuff.
That's also part of it, but people will call it that as well. So what are you going to do, right?
I thought that's a good thing.
Fantasy is as you have described, Wisp.
What?
As people from, I would say that most of the fantasy and sci-fi basically comes around this idea of people from different backgrounds coming together and just working to overcome some things that are thrown to them onto them.
Yeah. And the corollary to the white savior dude is the magical Negro, or the guy with the special powers, or he's a really good musician. And there's a few stories of that. I don't see it inherently as a racial thing. I just see it as a guy coming in who's got knowledge and he sees an impoverished world and he wants to help it out, like a student, like a teacher coming into a classroom in the Bronx or something like that. So
isn't that a wizard?
I don't know.
Interesting.
Because
go on. Okay, the only way I could interpret it, this whole thing of white savior complex, is because most of the fantasy, at least as I know it, most of this kind of stuff was very popular in Europe and all the like. And probably due to the fact that it was from, the writers were from Europe, well, a lot of characters were white. And that's how it's kind of, most of fantasy is filled with you could say, white characters.
European.
And yes, European. But you know how it works for people that only see race.
Yeah. The thing I see here is, so if it's a competent, light-skinned persona that helps in some way, it's the white savior complex. And when it's a dark-skinned person helping, contributing in some way, it's the magical Negro.
I see.
So however we spin it, we're the bad guys.
Yeah.
There is a chance that this is his reasoning.
Yeah,
and I think we see the solution we just see in Asian cinema, where it's really just the because you do it with Asian characters and Asian characters. Like everyone's favorite Jackie Chan movie, Drunken Master, where his teacher is the blue-robed guy who's a mythological reference, which is the magician in the hero's journey, where you have the guy, the hero, and you have the magical dude who helps you, and they're both of the same race.
Yeah, you could take,
and that's all it is. It's just that it doesn't matter who comes from which skin color nonsense.
Yeah, that's the hero's journey, the boon that is awarded by the wise man, I believe, the third step. But yeah, that's it's pretty normal stuff. The difference is these days, because of wokeism, you have to associate like post-colonial theory and critical race theory and other.
Even if your country didn't have any colonies, like Finland, they still play the white savior nonsense, racism. You profited from colonialism. and black people built Finland stuff. They government funded, tax funded, in Finland. While the truth is, Finland never had any. They have barely been a country, and the Ottomans bought Finnish children as exotic, not so. Well, how do you say that? Slaves for specific things that we shall not name.
Okay, well, Finland...
But they totally profited from slavery, yeah.
Finland did win the 8th year in a row for the happiest place to live. So...
What? How?
I don't know.
Is it all the vitamin D in the milk?
Maybe. Anyway, let's get going. Here, this is a video from last year, April, from Princess Weeks. I thought it was... Patrick Weeks, but no, his wife is named Karen. Oh, sorry, Trix, whatever his name is anymore, from BioWare. This is a channel that's got about almost 300,000 subs, and this video itself is almost 200,000 views. So good for them. It's a very positive video. I'd say about 90% upvotes, and it's almost an hour long. We're not going to go for the entire hour, of course. It's a bit too long for our taste, but we'll try what we can. Depending on the arguments, if they're good, we'll keep going. If they're hurting our brains, we have to take breaks and stop. If it's a really good video, but we hate it, we'll cover it tomorrow. Who knows? We don't know. Couldn't tell you. So, 56 minutes. Here we go, guys. Whew.
Well, you knew I was going to talk about Dune eventually.
Oh god, this is specifically about Dune. Why did nobody warn me? Are you fucking insane? Do you have any idea what you're doing to me?
Slow down. It's not all about Dune. Just the first part. It's fine.
I was scared by her t-shirt for a second, and then she actually said it.
Yeah.
This is not gonna be good.
Well, it was
for my health.
No. The first 2 minutes are just talking about other things, but yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Other things are okay. Dune will kill me.
No, it's fine.
Release of Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2 earlier this month. Not only do we finally have a work that was once considered unadaptable, successfully adapted and profitable.
I don't think it's unadaptable. And this is not an adaptation, this is a complete rewrite of the story.
Yeah, the argument was...
It's not an adaptation.
Yeah, the argument was the first Dune was at 78 or 79 when they came out with it. Even the writers who knew science fiction said, this is really tough to put into a movie form. And when you saw it, the original, they cut out entire sections of conversations and entire scenes, which is like, yeah, you're going to have to do that, or else you won't have a movie.
Yeah, with the technology back then, really hard to make.
Especially that, yeah. So it was, the story itself wasn't that great, but the fact it was made in the first place, that was impressive.
Oh, the story of the first book is very classic.
Yeah.
The problem is just that it's a bit beyond. When was the first Star Wars movie?
78, was it?
Okay. So they could technically have made the sci-fi parts of it, of which there aren't very much, mind you. There are a lot of sci-fi parts in Dune, actually. But you have a lot of psychedelic consciousness stuff, scenes where you need some interpretive. You basically dance your name, and Odyssey 2001 would be the if you think of the ending. That's where that goes, and you can adapt the things described in the book. However, most of Dune is descriptive thought and theory about consciousness and politics. That's not something that happens on screen. That's not something that anyone talks with each other about. You would have to reframe that into dialogue in order to actually explore it. Yeah. So you would need to make a series out of Dune instead of big movies, because these would be... You would need to make 3-hour-long... A trilogy of the first book alone.
Yeah, we're talking like Game of Thrones stuff, which actually, if you were to translate Dune to a miniseries, what they tried to do with a few of the first books, I think it stopped at Children of Dune, I thought it was fine. It wasn't great. Obviously, the production value wasn't very high, but because it was all dialogue, it was all talking and all like conflicting, and here's this person going to take over this role, and this person dies in the next scene. It was like, okay, this works as a miniseries, and it was so low budget that it made sense. So I was like, all right, that was, later part of the night. Was it the 90s, early 2000s, I think? So
yeah, about then.
Yeah.
I think I caught 1 or 2 episodes on TV, and then never again.
Yeah. Anyway, it's not about Dune. We're just giving an example.
Yeah, I would contest the claim that it's not adaptable. It's just tough to work with. You need somebody competent, and Brian Herbert certainly is not.
All right. Let's keep going.
In the mainstream again, but a new audience is grappling with the narrative and themes around that work. From the outfit choices by actors, which are heavily inspired by Middle Eastern, North American, and Muslim imagery, and people dealing with the original.
Yeah, of course it is, because the Fremen are romanticized Islam.
Original text, in which author Frank Herbert was very frank about those influences. All this brings up the eternal questions of, is Paul Atreides a white savior?
No, it doesn't.
No, he isn't. He's a Jew.
He's just a guy. He's just a guy.
But honest, so sorry for blurting it out like that. I wanted to build up to that, but the thing, I'm so sick of these bloody books. They're very they're very frank about it later on. Up until then, it goes on about especially Brian, who wrote 4 to 6.
Well,
I'm 100% sure about that.
We don't talk about
He gushes about. We have to.
Oh.
He gushes about the hawkish nose of the Atreides, a very distinct feature. And then come the links to the planet Secret Israel, and yeah, they're not white. I'm sorry, it's not. It's the Atreides using the Fremen, whose religion is invented by the Bene Gesserit, who serve the people from the planet Secret Israel, in order to wipe the galaxy of any opposition. And then the Fremen are faded out, much to their own chagrin. So Stilgar was actually right that his culture will be cast off. They were just tools to be used. And if you see any parallels with real life politics here, that is your tinfoil hat speaking.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunate. I still remember the time you have shown me the passage about the secret Israel planet. That is, that was an experience.
Yeah, we probably can't put the pages on stream because we might get swatted or something. I don't know. But that's just, don't buy these books. They're not worth it. But if you get a copy, look it up yourself.
Yeah,
it's in there. It's insane.
Out of the 2 or 3 dozen canon books that are there, all the new ones are all like they're not flashbacks, but they all happened before the first few books.
Oh yes, because Brian has absolutely no clue what to do. He's an uncreative hack, and after his father died, he couldn't put his father's name on the books anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
And claim that they were his. So that's why his names are on all the what do you call that? Prelude books?
Yeah, the preliminary stuff. It's as if your dad was like Isaac Asimov, and you think I could write the Foundation series, no problem. Only you can't, and you have to do a prequel. The entire
and you can't even. Brian is even incapable of proper sentence structure.
All right. Anyway, this is not a Dune video. Just keep going.
Savior narrative, but what I think is more ask is, what is a white savior? Where does this archetype come from? And why is there a hard time separating characters written to promote white supremacy versus those meant to call it out? Let's start at the beginning. White man's burden. To understand where you get the white savior.
Those are Brits, by the way. If you want to talk about white supremacy, I usually expect the Germans with the weird armbands. Keep going. Because, these two fought each other for some reason.
Saviour, you must be introduced to Rudyard Kipling's poem, The White Man's
Not
Burden.
necessarily, but okay.
Written during the American-Philippine War and to celebrate the Diamond Jubilee of Queen Victoria, the heir they're working so hard to make in Queen Charlotte. A show that still gives me agita when I think too hard about it. The poem gave support to the idea of America's annexation and colonialism of the Philippines, and the idea that it should leave the islands better than they had found it now that
That's a nice thing. That's what the Romans try to do.
Well, this is the general idea.
And the Germans didn't like it because they didn't want to pay taxes to some foreign empire and be enslaved by them. So why didn't you do that? We only had sticks and stones, and they had formations and aqueducts and bathhouses and all of that jazz. Yeah. Why didn't you Africans fend them off? We could do it.
Why didn't you fight the Romans?
Why didn't you beat the Romans?
Go.
We killed three legions. It left Rome in shambles, and we didn't even know where Rome is. Somewhere behind the mountains that we didn't even know existed. It's great. You just suck.
They're getting it from the Spanish. In the poem, Kipling opens with, "Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed, go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need, to wait in heavy harness on fluttered folk and wild, your new caught sullen peoples, half devil and half child." And when you look up this poem on Wikipedia,
half devil and half child, that describes the emotionally immature pretty well.
It's a poem. It does not explain the White Saviour. It's just the origin of it. It's its own thing now. This is silly. Anyway, fine. Give us a history lesson.
Editorial, which makes all the undertones of the message very clear. Kipling was born in British colonial India and is responsible for The Jungle Book, and in his time was a prolific Nobel Prize-winning writer. Kipling believed that it was the burden of the British, and also to an extent other white Western powers, but he believed that the British were #the best at it, to civilize the rest of the world.
Yeah, just like the Yaqub Black Hebrew Israelites think that they are the best and have magical powers because of the melanin in the skin that gives them a direct link to the sun, which bestows their wisdom upon them. But somehow they lost their magical powers because we stole it.
Well,
however that worked.
Anyway,
I still want to know how I cast fireballs.
I mean, considering the amount of certain people in different places that, for example, would like the old British back, I guess they really were quite good at, uplifting people. And all of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of Indians that think they did better under the British. And there are some black South Africans who also would rather want the Boers back in power, because the communists from the ANC are destroying absolutely everything, including food production, as seems to be the only thing that communists are good at.
The continents. But in this poem, Kipling embedded the idea that white people are the gatekeepers of civilization to non-white societies, particularly darker-skinned ones, and also saying that while these cultures...
That is weirdly framed.
Yeah, this is...
Gatekeepers of civilization?
I wouldn't say gatekeepers.
If you're the bringer of civilization, you're not the gatekeeper of civilization.
Yeah, this is a poem written a long time ago, which has nothing to do... It's just a historical example of where the origin came from. It's silly. I don't know why she's bringing this up, aside from winning browning points. I don't get it.
Because it helps her argument.
Yeah.
It makes it seem like the other side is racist.
If you want to frame anyone as gatekeepers of civilization, you should look at the fictional Wakandans in the Marvel universe, who built a big wall around their tribe after they conquered some land and then left everybody outside to starve and impoverished in Africa and being enslaved when the Portuguese came along. Well, they weren't enslaved by the Portuguese. The Portuguese just bought the slaves, just like the Arabs did. So, Fun.
Were savage, and that there would be some harm that white culture would face from interacting with these communities, that it was the responsibility of those people to bring civilization to them, that they could save these peoples from themselves.
That is not gatekeeping. She is already confusing her own points.
Tyler Preston informs us that she's a writer at a Mary Sue.
Into a white savior culturally, and we
Are you
see this
serious?
precipitate into the typical.
We're listening to a Mary Sue poster. Oh my God, this is going to be horrible. Oh, we got some.
Explains why she puts on pink eye stuff.
Anyway, here's Vladimir Dragunov. Thank you, sir, for being a member for 38 months. A reminder that Chihuahuas are the spawn of the devil and need to be redacted. Okay.
That's anti-Mexican.
Okay.
Chihuahua is a state.
Anyway, for more wonderful insights into humanity, thank you, Vladimir, for the 5. If you lose to some island people who don't know what the sun looks like and put beans on toast, that sounds like a skill issue. Okay. Leave the Spanish alone, okay? Leave all these gentlemen.
I am not British, but beans on toast is not that bad.
Depends on the beans and depends on the bread.
Yes.
Anyway,
I would rather put the beans on real bread.
Oh, here we go. We're not getting into this.
White savior narratives that we've grown up watching, where you have
What?
a white, well-meaning educator help inner city youth in
Never watched
exchange
it.
for dance lessons and swagger, the ultimate cultural equivalent exchange. But white savior identities is not just...
What is equivalent about that?
I don't know. Who watched that show, guys? Anyone?
That sounds very, very unequivalent,
That sounds like something an old woman might watch, learning about parts of the states she'd never been to.
Isn't that just the same story as Sister Act?
No, not really. Kind of,
Come
not
on.
really.
held
See?
together
It's the same.
politics. It's not just the blind side. They have
What's
an
that?
important friend that has helped bridge the foundation between the new imperialist concepts that would exist in political cartoons to the pulp culture world which we live in today.
Okay. I think there's a big difference between the wild child premise of Tarzan and the white savior.
I
Yeah.
don't think that she wants to make this comparison here,
What?
considering what she was talking about before.
Yeah.
There is a reason there is no live action Tarzan in
Is Tarzan bringing civilization to the gorillas,
Maybe.
who are totally not black people?
Well, if I remember my theory correct, it was a French story called L'Enfant Sauvage, of this wild child sort of premise, and that was the basis for Tarzan. But that was a story of two doctors trying to make this wild child more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not human, but more civilized. They tried to, have him stop drinking with his hands or stop eating with his hands, actually domesticate him. Don't be an animal, because he was pulling hot coals out of the fire, and it was nothing. So he was all this big savage. He was like a little boy. So they tried to raise him, and it was very difficult.
Yeah, and there are wilder children that does happen. And another story, a story that's closer to what she probably wants to talk about, would be The Emerald Forest, which is based on a true story, where a kid gets more or less spirited away by a native, I think, South American tribe. I would have to look it up again.
All right.
And that's a really good movie. Watch The Emerald Forest.
Okay, here is Vladimir Dragunov again for the 5. Thank you, sir. Likewise, if you get annihilated twice by people who eat snails and frog legs while only killing less than 70 of them, then you suck. Or you just suck, sorry. Yes, the French are an interesting species. Anyway, let's keep going.
important names
they did fight
in
slavery.
The creation of adventure, sci-fi, and fantasy fiction are British author Sir H. Rider Haggard and the American author Edgar Rice Burroughs. Haggard's best-known works are King Solomon's Mines and She, A History of Adventure. In the former, he created the character of Alan Quatermain, who was featured in the comic and live action.
Now, that was obviously Sigmund Freud.
Well, I don't think this is the greatest example using the comic book, but fine, movie adaptation, yeah, okay.
Adaptation of A League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the movie that made Sean Connery retire, and sadly one of my mom's favorite movies. We watch it
Why sadly?
all the time.
It's at least entertaining.
And I probably would get it when it finally gets released in 4K, if I'm being totally frank. It's got really good miniature sets. Alan Quatermain is a professional big game hunter whose father was a Christian missionary. In King Solomon's Mines, he is asked to be a guide.
What's wrong with a Christian missionary? What
depends on how he spreads the faith.
Yeah, well, obviously, but I mean, what was wrong in general being a missionary?
She doesn't like virtue.
Well, okay. Oh God.
There's no other explanation.
What? Like these people who want to help others, they actively go out into dangerous, wild places to try to domesticate others.
Look, the sacrifices will stop.
Yeah.
The child sacrifices will stop. The child mutilations will stop. The slavery will stop.
It's just a funny thing for her to put you and then you. It's like, honey, what is wrong with you?
The first U was for the big game hunting. Which currently we do have a bit of a problem with poachers who kill elephants and such on a way too fast at killing the elephant babies.
Oh, really?
Because the ivory is getting rarer. Mm-hmm. And guess what? It's not white people doing the poaching. It's locals.
All right, I'm really surprised because Vladimir's on topic today, so I'm like, what's wrong with the world? Like, did you go partying and get drunk and you got money to burn? I don't know. Anyway,
go happy, buy a steak.
Yeah, maybe he's got some protein in his system. Who knows? $10. Wow, you've upped your game there. Go ahead, Disney. Race swap the guy who literally chucks spears and swings on vines in your next live action remake. I dare you. You don't have the balls. Hey, they just came off their latest release of the Forquat haircut lady singing. I still don't know what the review.
There's no Forquat.
There's some positive. There's some really.
They are abysmal. There are some that are completely abysmal.
Oh yeah, I'm so lost. I heard it was not what was advertised. I was like, oh, maybe it's good. And then I saw some reviews. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound.
It's not in a good way.
Okay.
Have you seen the pictures from the pre-sale tickets of the local cinema I posted?
I don't know what that was. It was you wrote a whole bunch of posts, and I was like, "What am I looking at here?"
There was the reserved seats for the first showings of the Snow White movie.
Oh.
There were for 3 showings on the first day. It had 15 sold tickets, pre-sold.
Nice.
That's like nobody's watching that.
All right. Well, maybe it's just because people have been going to the movie theater in general, and that's just the.
No, they do. They do. They have Ghost in the Shell Japanese original with subtitles running, and that thing is crammed full. People go to the cinema for cool stuff.
Yeah.
They don't go to the cinema for crap. It's not superhero fatigue. It's not fairy tale fatigue. It's not Star Wars fatigue. It's crap movie fatigue. People go to the cinema for good stuff.
Maybe it's just Disney. I think that's the only problem.
Yeah.
It's just Disney. Everything else is fine.
It depends.
Whose brother has disappeared in darkest Africa, trying to find the diamond mines of the biblical King Solomon. In She, it's about a professor named Horace Hawley who finds a lost kingdom in Africa who's ruled by a mysterious white-ish queen named Asha. These series and Haggard's success.
What does ish mean? Also, hey, why didn't you write cool magical fantasy stories about going someplace and
there's lots
finding cool stuff?
There's all kinds of. I remember growing up with a bunch, but there's all kinds of stories of people going on safari, people going to Egypt, people going to China, and just getting lost in adventure and artifacts and evil slave trades and artifact trades.
Yeah.
It's a pretty normal premise for young adult fiction. So
yeah, I think her people just lack the spirit of exploration and adventure.
yeah, it's where we got all these comics from the 60s and 70s, where we got Indiana Jones, all this inspiration from comic narratives. So very, very common. And that's probably the greatest part of American literature is the comic book. It's not just Marvel and DC. It's all the little great things. Even Europe has these too, but mostly I've read from America all these beautiful stories of adventure.
Yeah.
So
there are some interesting little things in the Splitter what is it called, distributor?
Oh yeah, publisher. Yeah.
Image does some other things outside the two big ones.
Yeah, Top Cow, I've seen.
And yeah, but really, if you don't want to go right into Franco-Belgian comics, which are expensive, you can also get expensive and really good little stories from Splitter.
All right.
Would launch the Lost World genre that is so popular today, just in different ways. The most recent examples you can kind of see of this are the King Kong movies, which are very much Lost World films. You can also see my friend's Lost World video series if you want to get more into that. The problem with the origin of this genre is that it usually worked by placing white characters in exotic locations that both stereotype the native populations of those places and highlight the bravery and
what do you mean with stereotyped? Don't you mean it showed their culture as it was?
Well, even if it was stereotyped, what's the issue? You know, the British immigrant or the French immigrant coming to a foreign land trying to domesticate the people there. That's fine.
Also, I think the problem in here comes from the kind of going at this why was it white people, right? And you could say it's a lot of times because a lot of those people were different kind of philanthropists and the like, and people who had money. Not everyone had a lot of money, and a lot of Europeans at certain points in time had money. They wanted to use it in various ways, sometimes to help others, sometimes to, I don't know, kind of have an adventure or the like, but, well...
Yeah, it was the intrepid thing to do for the people in Britain to either sail or fly down to parts of Africa to get away from their whatever lifestyle. Much the same way people have a cottage, well, in Canada at least, but maybe other parts of the world. You go away for once a year to your cottage. In this case, you take a trip to Africa. Anyway. Another $5 from Vladimir Dragunov. Thank you, sir. Now, to be fair, the Belgians took their hand fetish a little too far in the Congo. Okay, that seems to be little information that the rest of us are privy to. Anyway, let's keep going.
Prowess of the white leads, creating what we would call the mighty whitey trope. With Burroughs in his Tarzan series and John Carter of Mars books, he would add on to this kind of exceptional white man in a marginalized space. The Tarzan books are about a white child born to a marooned white English couple who was eventually raised by apes when those parents died.
Kind of special.
Despite
it's that
what the Disney movie would have you think there
UI
are black people where Tarzan is.
Sorry, thank you for the pause. Yeah, the UI balked for a second. John Carter of Mars is not some special guy. It's that people from Earth who get onto Mars will have relative superpowers because of the whole you have lower gravity. It could have been anyone else. It could have been an Asian. It could have been an African. Doesn't matter. It was him. That's all.
Yeah, I think this is losing itself from the post-colonialism talk or the wokeism element of that. You can use the trope. The trope is neither good nor bad. This is the point. It's just a pattern that we have seen over the years and go, oh, that's weird. That there's always some guy or some girl coming into another environment where they're either the expert of or they're an alien of. and they try to make it off for the better. So that's, again, it's neither good, it's neither bad. It's a pretty much fish out of water story with an exceptional talent or some sort of giftedness, usually. And that's the extraordinary or the fantastical element at times. And that's pretty much what Disney does on every story. It's like, oh, there's some magical element, there's some guy who's got a secret friend, or he has a magical power, whatever it is. And that's been that way for, well, every fantasy story, essentially.
In the cartoon, which is actually kind of goodish, shout out to Queen Law, but his main interaction with them in the first book is when they kill his adoptive ape mom, and he gets revenge on the killer by raiding the village and also playing tricks on them, and they begin to view him as this evil white spirit. And Burroughs said that in the ape language, Tarzan means white skin. In the John Carter series, or Barsoom series, the character of John Carter is a Confederate soldier veteran who just one day gets sucked up to Mars, baby, and ends up pulling a reverse Superman, where the atmosphere of Mars, which is called Barsoom, gives him these powers that make him stronger and faster than the other inhabitants of the planet. And
no,
gets to just be like the Prince of Mars by marrying the hot.
Yes, you had something more to say?
No. He's just not telling it right.
Well, the adaptation of the movie wasn't very good, so yeah.
Alien, and the Martians are segmented by color, which, you know, and these books are old as balls. And
yeah, that's actually the first science fiction, the first big science fiction that happened, early 20th century, like 1910s, I believe. And I personally, I was happy they made it. They attempted it. But they should have stretched it out across several movies, but they didn't because it flopped. And so they feared it would flop anyway, so they crammed too much into the first one, which would inevitably lead to it flopping overall, just like the Super Jupiter ascending nonsense. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of failure, sadly. The thing is, in the story, you had several groups of people that were all color associated. You get green people and blue people and all of that stuff, and they all had a specific job on Mars that they were a role they were fulfilling, and that wasn't explored really. Think of it like not Green Lantern. That's that.
Okay, that's an interesting way of putting it. All right, Frog Jupiter for the 5. Thank you, sir. Children of Yakub felt so bad about beating the first race so much that they tried to teach the first race how to win to make colonizing fun again. Oh, I don't know. It's trying to make a joke of a parody. It doesn't really work anymore for me. It's just like, what are you talking about? As soon as I heard of that thing, I was like, no, this is a joke, right? This is a meme. This isn't real. And then I got even more pictures, and I was like, okay, I can't take this anymore. Anyway, back to the wonderful person who likes talking about stuff that she doesn't like, I guess.
Active effect of these texts on our daily lives, but they are all cornerstones of not just their individual genres, but in a continuous cycle of perpetuating these ideas and peppering them into our modern...
No. I don't think, as seminal as Star Wars is, it is perpetuating ideas into other science fiction. That doesn't work that way.
I also don't think you should conflate the bringer of civilization with the one hero guy from outside the culture, nation, people, tribe that saves the day. We have that the other way around too. Like, what the hell is Doctor Who?
Kenyan author Ngugi wa Thiong'o, in his work Decolonizing the Mind, discusses how language and literature in colonial schools worked to reinforce the ideas that African cultures were less...
They literally did not invent the wheel. Africa did not invent the wheel. You want to tell me that is equivalent to even what went on in the Americas, where they had this super level, top tier level Stone Age culture, where they built these giant ziggurats, had over 15 million people living in South America with a wonderful agricultural sector that then died due to pandemics, but that's another story. That's culture. They had stuff. Africa didn't develop stuff. And you want to tell me that, and I'm not comparing this to European culture, European civilizations. I'm comparing Africa to South America. South America was more developed than Africa. So these cultures certainly have a different value because they have a different level of development. That doesn't mean that the Africans weren't good people. That's another question. It's just a question of technological development.
Yeah, I mean, the issue of culture being superior or inferior, I mean, you could just look at all the ratings we give countries over the years, over the decades, and say, wow, why am I living in this country? And there's usually a historical reason. Your family's here, your friends are here. But in reality, if you had the freedom, if you had if you could succeed going anywhere, you would choose the country that has the best conditions for you and your family to prosper. And in that case, it's usually not Africa or parts of Africa. Not saying Africa is bad. There's great cities in Africa, of course, great countries in Africa. But it's the same issue that's happening with Canada and the States right now, or Canada and Mexico and the States. Can you survive? Can you thrive? And the issues with most Canadians are no, you can't, unless you've already have some establishment. And that's based off culture, that's based off politics, it's based off all the economics that are set up or have been set up for the past 20, 30 years, really. So, whew. Yeah, decolonizing the mind, not sure I'd ever read that.
It just means to replace all the white stuff with black stuff. And it's the black stuff that these black supremacists are writing is on par with the insanity of the Nazis' Aryan giants from the Himalayas magic nonsense. It's just insane crap. Of my people are totally awesomer than your people, which doesn't explain why your people were not ruling the world. But they somehow should.
All right.
Weird how that works.
These African children with texts that would highlight to them the greatness of British Empire and white British identity. It was worse when the colonial child was exposed to images of his world as mirrored in the written language of his colonizer, where his own native languages were associated in his impressionable mind with low status, humiliation, corporal punishment, slow-footed intelligence and ability, or downright stupidity, non-intelligibility, and barbarism. This was reinforced by the worlds he met in the works of such geniuses of racism as Rider Haggard or Nicholas Montserrat. And I think it's such an important quote because we set up this idea that these things are in the past, and we very limit the way in which that literature and language and even something like an adventure series that most people wouldn't think of as relevant being used to teach people in other places.
I have a question. If she is so much against the White Saviour stuff, why is the artwork behind her on the wall a black woman kissing a white guy? Or maybe it's two guys, I don't know.
Oh, well, she likes what she likes. If you want to criticize the trope, that's fine. Just give me examples why it doesn't work. Right now we're just talking about theory about colonialism, which is like, fine. I don't know what it has to do with fiction. I thought the poem was enough. Apparently not. We have to take it apart piece by piece for some reason. But okay, going with John Carter was a good start. That was fine. Then we just switched gears again. Anyway, more from Vladimir Dragunov. I don't know what you're doing with your Fridays, but thank you, sir, for your time. South America had relatively sophisticated roads and cities. Then they got decimated by diseases, and the Amazon ate those now abandoned cities. Yeah, it's interesting. All this.
Yeah, within 200 years, from empire to nobody left, and people reverted to mini tribal communities.
Yeah,
that lost all technology.
I was watching a few, not the Joe Rogan podcast, but some podcast of guy, I think he was on Joe Rogan years ago, and he was talking about the lost cities of Africa, and these massive sites that looked like they were like millions of people lived there, and they just vanished.
Africa? You mean South South America?
Was it South America? Okay.
South America.
Yeah, it must have been South America. It was fascinating that people who lived there, like everything was kicking, all the plenty you needed to survive, all the water, and just all of a sudden one thing like disease, just boom, and they're gone. Amazing stuff.
Yeah. Basically the same thing that happened in Europe every time a plague came over. Which all originated in China.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're up against you, we being white people, you are the antagonist, and we will overcome you. Even if you may think you have the advantage, we are going to come up on top because we are just the superior people. And where does it say that these texts then, even if they're separated from their meaning, those messages still kind of travel on and on. King Solomon Mines came out in 1885, right?
I have a question on this whole thing. If the white people were also good, why did the Viking colonies not thrive, not sustain, not survive? Because they went all the way down to South America. It's like the whole history doesn't work if you take everything into account.
Oh dear, we got
the version of history they try to gaslight us with.
All right, this is another one from Vladimir again. I guess Vladimir just likes his history. Good on you, sir. A reminder that the Spaniards beat the Aztecs because they allied tribes and other nations that saw them as a better alternative to the Aztecs.
Well, yeah, they wanted the child sacrifices to stop as well. It was a horrible tyranny. That only the only tribe that sided with the Aztecs was the one that was literally benefiting from it all, being the enforcers, basically. So yeah, it's the Aztecs were the lesser, not the Aztecs, the Spaniards were the lesser evil. Cool stuff.
The last Indiana Jones, which we hope is the last, came out in 2023. Without Alan Quatermain, you don't get Indiana Jones. That is 138 years of influence traced back to this one.
I highly doubt that. I'm quite sure other writers, other science fiction or adventure or fantasy writers over the years would have gone overseas and experienced the same things as other humans and wrote about it, and that would have inspired other writers to write about it. There are things, maybe actually go to those places and write fiction about them. That's I mean, after 100 years, yeah, I think there are at least one or two people within the second generation that would have done that. Just maybe.
When it comes to Burroughs, he was a eugenicist who believed that Anglo-Saxons were the elite race, and Tarzan, being the child of two English people, was created to reflect that. John Taliaferro writes in Tarzan Forever, the life of Edgar Rice Burroughs, creator of Tarzan. All of his plots, especially the Tarzans, boil down to survival of the fittest, a theme both romantic and political. Burroughs, like so many of his contemporaries, believed in a hierarchy of race and class. In the Tarzan stories, black...
Oh, you mean like the woke do?
Well, this is assumptions. Like, if you believe in a hierarchy of anything related to animals, if you're talking about survival of the fittest, yes, there's a hierarchy. To suddenly apply that to class, be very specific what you mean. Economic class? Social class? Class in a business? In a hierarchy? Like, what are you talking? This is a big jump from...
Also, the main mistake everybody makes is that fit doesn't mean physically fit, but adapted, as in fitting into the environment you are in. If that works, then you thrive.
Well, this is the problem I have with any of the Marxist dialectic, is everything suddenly becomes categorized. You're like, okay, fine. I want to understand where you're coming from. You categorize it to make it easier to understand. Great. But this is just class. I'm assuming it has to do with economic status or class within a society of some country that has these arguments, so these ability to read Marxist thought or literature Because you do not suddenly go, oh yeah, he's clearly talking about survival of the fittest and class. Like survival of the fittest in a wild child scenario. I was like, no, there's no class in that. It's a bunch of people trying to eat amongst the animals. He's a wild man. Where would be the class for animals aside from there's a lion, don't go near it, or run away from the leopard? It's like, okay.
I mean, it's just the same as the whole God tells man that he rules over everything. Which in a positive way you rather interpret as your custodian of nature instead of exploiter. You can derive both from that.
Yeah. Anyway, another $10 from Vladimir. Vladimir is definitely drunk, or he didn't buy the bottle of booze on his way out, and he just saved the money, and he's throwing it at us. So there you go. Thank you, sir. For the 10. If I remember correctly, there is a story in the Viking sagas about a shield maiden slapping a sword between her breasts to break out some Native Americans and scare them off. The crazy part is that it worked. I don't remember.
I have not gotten to that. Where is that one?
We're talking about the Norse mythos, right?
Yeah, but in which book can I find that?
Yeah, I'm very curious because I've glanced over the prose edda, but not the poetic. Poetic is a bit bigger. So
the poetic, no, it's actually quite short.
Well,
but there's this weird stuff in there.
Yeah, well, one of them is published a little differently, and then there's the what's the other one called? It's more of a series of songs. The hell is it? It's a lot bigger. Anyway, been a while since I've read those. Don't remember them talking about Indians though. Anyway, cool.
Superstition. Arabs rapacious. On Mars, the races descend from a tree.
What does rapacious mean? I'm not familiar with the word.
Do I have to be bothered to look it up for you?
Yes, please.
Rapacious?
Rapacious.
Rapacious.
R-A-P-A-cious.
Aggressively greedy or grasping. Rapacious.
Doesn't that fit for both?
Rapacious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ask any developmental aid worker in Africa, and he will tell you these people are absolutely superstitious and greedy as hell, and you can't teach them anything. The one guy who may be more developed than the rest, they will tear down, because the moment he manages to save anything up or build anything, they will try to get it from him because they want to have it now. It's absolutely childish. That's the problem. They can't develop up because they're trapped in this childish mentality. So the ones that are a little bit better, their best chances are leaving.
Of life are color-coded red, green, yellow, and black. Burroughs was obsessed with his own genealogy and was extremely proud of his nearly pure Anglo-Saxon lineage. He came from good stock, a critical ingredient for good standing, he asserted. Over time, his fervid appreciation of genetic predetermination led him to the radical fringes of Darwinism, eugenics. At one point, he even wrote a column for the Los Angeles Examiner calling for the extermination of all moral imbeciles and their relatives, a doctrine that would soon be trumpeted by Adolf Hitler.
There we go.
In an unpublished essay, I See a New Race, Burroughs offered his own final solution to the world's problems. Now, I know what
Yeah, and strangely enough, all the socialists are also for it. Because it's not a Nazi thing. It's not brown specifically, it's a red thing. And since we're on topic here, eugenicists were not persecuted at the Nuremberg trials, much to the dismay of the judges, some of whom therefore considered the Nuremberg trials a sham. They were forbidden to bring up the topic by the Brits and Americans who had their own eugenics programs running and wanted to continue, and therefore they couldn't persecute the Nazis for it, because then they would be hypocrites and would also need to stop their bullshit. The guy who wrote up the Pledge of Allegiance in the United States was a eugenicist. It's also why they had the funny the funny salute for the Pledge of Allegiance as well, because and that was a red socialist, because they wanted to turn America into the next socialist democratic republic.
Yeah, this sounds like more of a social element of Darwinism. I wouldn't call it. Well, I guess you could call it fringe, but it's like a social engineering idea. Like how do we get people to organize themselves? Well, we say we break them down into classes again, which is Marxism, and then we say, okay, you're superior because we said so, and you're inferior because I don't know, we don't like you, and that's it. I don't think we can apply this properly in an argument for some guy from 200 years ago and how this trope came about because of him. That does not quite make sense. We could use the hero's journey a lot easier to make it apply to most stories anyway. And if you could see that pattern, then all the other patterns are inferior. Because if we have a unifying pattern, like I don't want to call the hero's journey a unifying pattern, but it traps so many other tropes together. It goes, oh, it makes more sense this way because it's a heroic story of courage and virtues and things that are positive, not downplaying the Tarzan's not downplayed. Tarzan's not a villain. All these stories, all these nursery rhymes from Disney or what have you, none of them are portraying these characters as bad. They're downtrodden and they're given the opportunity to rise up, but they're not inherently bad because some white guy came by and helped them out, or some magical dude came by. So I don't get what she's running for, and I just want examples of stories that are relevant to our times. We could say, okay, yeah, that's a bad story. That should not exist that way. Because I can't really think of those aside from adaptations that went wrong, like Mulan, which you didn't have to change Mulan. You just had to use it. It was totally fine. Even the Disney version wasn't as great. It was fun, but not the classical example. More consumable, let's just say.
Like, these books came out years ago. Who cares? How impactful could they possibly be? We know how impactful they can be because they have stood the test of time and can be rebranded. Tarzan is relevant to millennials because of the Disney movie. It has kept Tarzan as a name culturally relevant to up till now. Relevant enough for them trying to make a movie in 2016. Like, the books are in the public domain now, and we've seen so many people taking advantage of public domain films. So, like, Tarzan will probably reappear in our cultural lexicon in some kind of way sooner enough. And Tarzan has been cited as one of the first superheroes in a sort of sense of him being a superhuman person. As noted in the Imperial Superhero, since its earliest manifestation...
What? The Imperial?
Tarzan's not a superhero.
The Imperial? What is going on here?
You people are really out of your mind. You are deranged.
You
don't understand what terms mean.
Yeah, the connection, like, from Tarzan to superhero to some obscure thing. I don't know how many mental skips you have to do to connect those things.
Yeah, do they mean an imperial society, like an imperial government, like Japan could be imperialist, and therefore
the article is saying, since its earliest manifestations, the superhero genre has been a production of imperial culture in which the colonized are reduced to what Guy terms an alter ego of the colonizer. 1957. Did you know that most of... Oh god, I don't... This is so horrible. The American superhero writers were not white. They were like Frank Herbert. So is this just weird anti-Semitism? Or are you trying to point out that the Jews are all into this Übermensch thing where they want to have superpowers and rule over other people like Magneto, who was in the Holocaust?
Here is another from Vladimir Dragonov. Again, sir, you're on point. I do appreciate you staying on topic. It's amazing when you focus. We could actually have a great conversation here. Okay. Where are we here? Okay. Wow, a guy from the late 1800s and early 1900s was racist. That's crazy. Yeah, I know. It's a little different. It's a little different when you describe people from 200 years ago or 300 years ago, and you're like, yeah, I'm sure we're all kind of like that back then to certain reasons, considering their lack of intelligence and understanding. Makes sense.
And the socialists never stopped being racist. They never stopped.
And the second one from Vladimir Dragunov, notice she isn't talking about Mowgli Brothers, the Jungle Book, which actually came before Tarzan. And I'm not sure if it inspired Tarzan. It would make sense. Obviously, they're both in the jungle, very similar. But they're both a series of stories. It's not just a story. It's like a bunch of stories, like the way the authors would write a serial in the paper, and it would just keep getting published every week. So, yeah, no, these are very classic stories about heroism and growing up and being a child, being a wild child within this wilderness and finding friendship and learning to survive. And Disney was smart with at least the Jungle Book, I thought. They did a good job. This is getting, as we know, a bit too Marxist for our tastes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, are you surprised by a Mary Sue author being completely into the black supremacist Marxist crap?
Oh,
Which is all about replacing what they believe is white eugenics with their black eugenics.
If it was just
because you have to just invert everything.
Yeah, if it was just focused on the historical examples of these writers, like, hey, this is where it came from. It's like, great. What does that mean? And here's another example of some guy I disagree with. It's like, that's 300 years old. How does that relate to the tropes of today? Why is it?
By the way, there's a great Mowgli Jungle Book anime series. I forgot what year. I always think it's the 80s, but I think it's a 90s one.
Oh.
It ran in Germany. It was really cool.
Genre has been a production of imperial culture in which the colonized are reduced to what Albert Memmi terms an alter ego of the colonizer. Colonialism, explains Anna Lomba, reshapes knowledge to perpetuate an artificial sense of difference between self and other, so that other, writes Robert Young, is only
Man, look at all these very British
false
names.
Representation. He is a prototype of an entire genre that we're still making movies on right now. And John,
okay, tell me who exactly is making movies off that imperial whatever superhero concept. Like I was never taught this, and I highly doubt anyone who's making a superhero comic or making their own comic in general is not referencing any of these people or being inspired by any of these people. It just doesn't have.
Or ever heard of any of them.
Doesn't even know who these people are.
Albert Memmi. Oh, by the way, wait. Chat tells us that Princess Weeks wrote an article about why race swapping gingers is a good thing.
What? Why? What? So you mean girls with freckles and red hair?
Yeah, redheads. Why redhead genocide is a good thing?
Oh.
They're an absolute. They're probably the smallest minority on the planet in regards to phenotype, and it's a recessive phenotype too. So, man, you're really hating people for their superficial attributes, aren't you?
I thought the woke loved minorities. I don't know. That seems counterintuitive to what they do. Anyway.
For Disney, but that doesn't mean that the books are still not hugely important as a sci-fi series with a protagonist that was extremely popular and aligned with Lost Cause Southern propaganda. It's like,
okay, I'm sorry, I have to, Mrs. Princess, I have to sadly read you from the biography of Albert Memmi, the horrible white supremacist eugenicist. Memmi was born in Tunis, French Tunisia, in December 1920, one of 13 children of Tunisian Jewish Berber Maïra, or Margherete, Sarfati, and Tunisian Italian Jewish Fraggi Memmi, a saddle maker. He he grew up speaking French and Tunisian Judeo-Arabic. What the fuck? During the Nazi occupation of Tunisia, Memmi was imprisoned in a forced labor camp from which he later escaped, and so on. So she's complaining about a Jewish eugenicist, whom she attributes to... But the guy got 99 years old. Holy shit, he died 2020. Wow. What was the name of the other guy? So the problem is, she's trying to paint this on all the Europeans with a light skin. Are you sure you want to do that? Also, he was a Zionist, so and as far as I know, the left hates the Zionists because they're against the Palestinians. So you need to look at your resolution of when do you call whom what. Man.
All right, we are almost at 12-minute mark. I feel like she's just jumping from reference to reference for no reason. Like, it's just, this happens in history, and this person wrote that. You're like, okay, cool. And then this person said this, and he was racist. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. I mean, we just keep changing authors to a book in the 1900s. Like, okay, yeah, and where are we going?
Wait. In Racisme, Memmi defined racism as a social construction assigning values to biological differences, both real and imagined, to the advantage of the one defining and deploying them, and to the detriment of the one subjected to that act of definition. In doing so, he countered three major arguments of scientific racism: a pseudoscientific belief in the existence of empirical evidence in support of racist beliefs, and so on. So he turned from the eugenicist, in quotation marks, supremacist, to the race constructionist, leftist today that we have today in the woke. Isn't that amazing?
I just got a notification on my phone that some judge blocked an injunction from Trump to send 2 male prisoners back to women's prisons. Interesting.
Good.
Yeah, well.
Wait, no, I'm confused.
That's a bad thing, actually.
He blocked the guys to go to women's prison, or the judge blocked the guys to go to women's prison?
No, the judge blocked Trump's order to get them out of prison because they're men in a women's prison.
Okay.
And the judge says,
okay, so
it's bad. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a bad thing. Okay, yeah. Men shouldn't be in women's prison.
Yeah, so woke is still an issue in the West, unfortunately. Whether we're talking
Marxism. Marxism is an issue.
Yeah, whether we're talking about men in women's sports or men in women's prisons or post-colonial, whatever exactly I think it's post-colonialism. I don't know. She's rambling on here.
At the end, it's just this Hegelian nonsense.
All right, let's go for
the removal of distinctions.
Yeah, let's go for another 3 minutes just to see if she's focusing on something I could understand.
Of the John Carter of Mars or the Barsoom books are something that gets copied and pasted all the time.
How?
You want to know what modern blockbuster series was partly inspired by the Barsoom books? The character of Flash Gordon was partially...
Avatar was ripped from at least 3 different franchises, including a comic series that was literally about blue aliens on a planet that then the protagonist goes native with. I don't remember the name of the comic series. I saw pictures of it back in the day, and it has exactly the plot of the first and the second movie.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue...
It's not even lifted, it's just copy-paste.
Yeah, you could argue all of the John Carter books inspired all of the styles of science fiction the past 100 years, but that doesn't mean they're racist, that doesn't mean they're colonialist, doesn't mean they're good or bad. James Cameron had like Arthur C. Clarke, I'm sure he was inspired by. He was inspired by Ellison because, of course, he literally stole from Ellison. This is... this is what writers do. This is how writers learn. This is how readers learn. Like, oh wow, I've never heard of this idea.
Well, but there's a difference between taking inspiration from and just hard copy pasting.
I think the problem.
Robert Jordan was inspired by Lord of the Rings, but the Avatar movies they were just copy pasted.
I think the problem we have currently with most of the properties is that there is so much stuff right now that you can trace whatever you want to something.
Yeah.
Anytime. Because there's just so much connections. There's so many people that were just saying, oh yeah, the hero's journey. Okay. It's part of a structure. And if you want, you can track almost every story back to a point that you want to put out. So that is kind of the, I would say, modern problem with stuff like that, with the inspiration and all of that.
Yeah, and of course people would put themselves into those stories. And if Africans had a comic book or fantasy culture of writing books, which they hadn't even invented, then maybe they would have written such stories. Well, they have their mythology, but then everybody had that, the wonderful oral traditions. I mean, the Norse mythology is an oral tradition. It's just that at some point, when people had better means of writing things down, a few people actually did the effort to get around like Snorri did and collect those stories and actually write them down to preserve them for the future so that they don't get accidentally lost, especially as the practice of teaching the next generation all of those stories got lost more and more.
All right.
So now we have this stuff. Now we have comic books and novels.
Here is Vladimir Dragonoff again for the 5. Next, she's going to say a German company that was founded before 1930 was involved in some bad things in the 1940s.
Well, there were companies that were founded in the war, so
yeah.
And they're still around.
Cars.
They just don't talk about when they were founded. It's great. Volkswagen had its 75th anniversary not that long ago, and I'm told it was a very, very nice event. Just that there was this weird atmosphere in the room, because usually when you have these anniversary events that you celebrate, you usually talk about the founding of the company and everything, and they did that actually in the oldest building they still have that was built back then. It's just that somehow nobody talked about the founding of the company.
Well, I think the big controversy with was it Volkswagen, or I'm trying to remember the it was a decade ago. They flubbed the numbers on the exhaust for diesel.
Yes, that was Volkswagen.
That was a big stink to the whole car.
And the same. By the way, the same lawyer who dug through, was it a lawyer who dug through that? Rainer Füllmich was the same who then later started digging into the whole Kuf stuff and then got attacked by the government very, very harshly. And just recently we learned that our German secret services apparently knew the truth all along, which means that all the politicians knew the truth all along with the whole Wuhan thing.
I wouldn't be surprised if most of the countries in the world who had intelligence agencies knew the truth all along, and they just didn't say
it. They did that. Everybody knew. Yeah. They were just all conspiring against all of you, all of us.
Volkswagen is a fantastic brand, even if they flubbed the numbers 10 years ago.
Well, they're currently dying thanks to the woke socialists ramming it into the ground, demanding they build more EVs that nobody buys and that can afford, and now want them to sell production facilities in Germany to communist China, to BYD, so that they can produce when Volkswagen can't. Which, why the hell would you sell your factories to your competition? I'm telling you, everything that the Western socialists are doing is all to the benefit of China. And they all keep saying how they envy the Chinese government on how easy it can operate. we are run by absolute evil. This is not just basic corruption. This is just horrible. Whether it's Trudeau or any of the guys over here.
All right, we're at the 12-minute mark.
Or this guy in California.
And we're going to go for another few minutes. This is kind of going nowhere.
Couldn't get the rights to the John Carter series. And what series is inspired in part by Flash Gordon?
Star Wars. 1 billion years in the making.
Which has one of the most racist fandoms out right now.
No,
what?
How do you...
How? How was it? Why was it a racist fandom, you bloody... What the...
That's because we want aliens and not black people. In the
and we were all looking forward to Finn's story unfolding as a Jedi. Everybody was looking forward to that because it was hinted so blatantly. It was cool. A stormtrooper turned Jedi. That's amazing. We all wanted to see that. And you call us racist? You racist bitch? You bloody bint.
Oh dear, here we go. This is interesting though, because this is true. Vladimir Dragunov, 5 again. Fun fact, Henry Ford was mentioned favorably by the name in Mein Kampf.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay, anyway. Star Wars is racist because the people... Okay, thank you. Just alienate your entire fan base. That's great, honey.
Also, I think she's just trying to build a super giant, long, all-encompassing guilt by association network.
This book was inspired by that book, which was inspired by the biggest movie franchise, and everything after that is racist. Yeah, okay. For sure.
Henry Ford, because I think he was as well. Doop, doop, doop.
Anyway, the revelations keep coming with her.
On random trailers. So when we talk about modern white savior characters like Paul Atreides, Daenerys Targaryen, who has joined our wall, we aren't just talking about them in a vacuum.
Joined your wall as a character you look up to, or as a character you dislike and you just put them on the wall? What does that mean? Do you like her? Or is she like a good version of the white savior character?
Well, she's insane, and maybe that's why she relates to her.
Well, that's the adaptation version, I guess.
They're just characters that just popped into existence based off of nothing. We are talking about the spiritual and cultural literary descendants of a Tarzan, a John Carter, a Alan Quatermain, an Aisha, and the white men who wrote them with an agenda of spreading an idea of Britain.
Wait. You're saying Targaryen or any of the books written by Tolkien or Martin or whatever have an agenda of British white superiority?
I especially George R. Martin, who is as far left as it. He's not as far left as Stephen King, but he is short of it.
I think she wanted to make the comment that it's these first guys that wrote those first books are where it all began, and that due to their books, it spread all out. So now there is all this invisible racism and all this invisible stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That is how I interpret what
We're
she's
literally breathing white supremacy.
This is turning into a less energetic version of Maggie May Fish. It is just
less entertaining.
Well, it's just racism every other flavor, and you're like, what are you talking about? How are we getting here? How is Stormborn a white supremacist? Like, what are you talking about? Did you read any of the books? You think race was on Martin's idea for maybe inspiration? Maybe he wanted to make some connections between her freeing the slaves. I don't know how that's a bad thing, being a white savior, and she's freeing all these people. Okay, maybe that's bad in your mind, but I don't see how that's a bad thing in the story.
So I don't know whose idea that was, but somebody put on George R. R. Martin's early life section Wikipedia his 23andMe results, which are 22.4% Ashkenazi Jewish.
Really?
which his nose kind of tells. But so you're again complaining about the Semites.
Oh no.
Woman, why are you anti-Semitic? Why do you hate the Jews?
Okay, let's not go there. Oh jeez.
She's going there all the time.
I know.
She's like, the evil white people. And we look, oh, it's Ashkenazi Jewish.
All right. One more from Vladimir Dragunov. To be fair, as far as I know, Marin didn't write an underage orgy. Really? I mean, Martin didn't write. He wrote a lot of orgies. I don't know if they were underage or not.
He means the Stephen King thing from It.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, guys, if you're expecting...
No, Martin didn't... That's not what Martin wrote. Martin wrote a chapter in the first book about his self-insert character who was fat with a very tiny ding-dong that he then complained about being very tiny and ugly.
Yeah.
For an entire chapter. I don't know what it is with lefties and writing this smut into their books that then are supposed to be big literature. You have that in book 5 and 6 of Dune as well. I talked about that previously. It also involves children.
Okay, well, we don't have to talk about Dune anymore.
Right.
It's
What
okay.
is it with these people?
Only read up to book 2 and a little bit of 3 and you'll be fine. Anyway.
Yeah, and after 3.
Okay.
And superiority through the way these characters interacted with not just brown characters.
What's a brown character? I'm sorry. What does this mean?
I'm brown after 2 weeks in Greece.
Is it olive-skinned? Is it someone from the south?
Well, bronze.
Yeah.
Is bronze brown?
Is it a Greco-Roman? What's the wrestling people called? I can't remember. They oil themselves up.
The wrestling people?
Yeah, there's a old.
Sumo?
No. It's an actual Greek sport.
The Olympians, like one of the sports.
It's not an Olympic sport, but it's a famous Greek wrestling thing. Anyway, they have olive skin. They got brown skin. Anyway, this is the brown people. Why is she even using this language in the first place?
Palais.
Is it Palais?
Palais.
Okay, fair enough. I can't remember.
Never heard of it.
It's interesting because they grab everywhere. It's just like grab you, like they.
That sounds gay.
It is very gay. Anyway.
But with the in general, with superiority, with authority, with purpose of being chosen, because they were representing the chosen race.
Well, that does fit with all of these writers being 22.4% Ashkenazi Jewish. Going on about being the chosen race and having superpowers given to them by God or something.
They might be Judeo-Christian. We don't know. We have no idea of finding out.
I don't think they like to be Christian.
Well,
lots of these people don't like Christianity a lot, which also kind of fits with being 22.4% and thinking of themselves as the chosen people. Yeah, I think we found the link here.
How dare these white guys talk about how great their religion is through themselves? Yeah,
only the Ashkenazi Jewish may be the chosen people, not the white people.
Can you imagine all the mothers thinking their son is the gift from God? You know, it's like, oh, what a horrible idea. Can't write about that, girls. It's too religious for the rest of the world. That's racist even. It's like, what are you talking about? It's my son.
Oh dear.
We're going to take a slight break from White Saviour.
Oh, so you took like a month off?
Clean your room.
To like change your entire video around and take a break and have a life? Yeah.
Clean your room.
To talk about equally as important fan fiction. But most
the
issue of
binding. No!
Don't do that.
I am complaining that fanfiction writers write about what they like.
How is fanfiction...
And that doesn't involve you?
How is it equally important than actual published works from like the masters? Why would you ever compare the two?
Okay, so we went from these few people propagated the entire concept of the White Saviour, and now we are going into fanfiction.
Why not?
Sorry, what?
Why not? How about we get into Dojin? Why don't we get into like porn fan fiction. That'd be the best. Like, you put up on your wall. This is my Sailor Moon doujin. Like, yeah, it's the White Saviour complex saving the universe from the power of the evil Queen Beryl.
So look. The answer is very simple. Since her ideology is the Hegelian ideology of removing distinctions between things, Aufhebung, she needs to remove the distinction between the works of the masters and the plagiarism that is fanfiction. And in order to put them both on the same level, therefore elevating fanfiction and tearing down the masters, and therefore allowing the possibilities of replacing the works of the masters with the fanfiction, which then gives her the justification to rewrite the works of the masters and censor them, like they did with the works of Dahl, where they censor out lines like, "Oh, he was very fat," because that's fatphobic. That's the point. That's what's really going on here.
So yeah, I don't know if we want to keep going. I'm going to see where she's going with this, but if she starts getting into random nonsense,
I want to see if I'm right on this.
This is going to be silly. Here we go.
Of course.
Fiction community. Lately, there's been an issue of people buying on Etsy bound copies of fan fiction.
How is that illegal? What's wrong with making fan fiction and publishing it?
I didn't expect that one. Hey, you're self-publishing your crap. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I mean, good for you. You could publish that, and people want it. I mean, that's amazing.
I mean, there is some actually good fan fiction out there. So, yeah.
Yeah, fine.
And sometimes you have some new IP coming from that.
Yeah, it depends. Some stuff is obviously licensed, but in most cases, you get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, in order to overtly backpedal a little bit, a lot of the bigger authors back in the day were also, they had phases, they had their little eras. Like when Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet, everybody wrote their version of Romeo and Juliet. The German version is by Friedrich Schiller, called Kabale und Liebe, which is absolutely dry and boring because the fucking hack didn't get what the actual joke was. He had no humor in it. And
it was German, so you know.
I think it was Swiss specifically.
Oh, well.
Which really explains that. We do have humor. I'm not sure about the Swiss. We have to ask Crazy Philosopher about that. Yeah, you had tons of stuff. Like Waiting for Godot.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of other people had done their own versions of, well, I'll write a play about a guy who never shows up. There's tons of stuff like that. Virginia Woolf is one of those, as well as The Importance of Being Earnest, both by Oscar Wilde, incidentally. So, yeah, but you had more and more stuff like that. The thing is just, if somebody buys it, if enough people buy it, then it's good. What was this? Twilight was a fan fiction of something, right? Yep. And then
50 Shades of Grey, I think.
No. 50 Shades of Grey was the fan. 50 Shades of Grey was the quasi fan fiction of Twilight. But Twilight was also taken from something else.
I was thinking of My Immortal, which is the worst version of fan fiction from Harry Potter. And that's that's what we do. This is why we joke about fan fiction. We don't say it's horrible. We know it's bad inherently unless you see something like 50 Shades of Grey, which was originally a Twilight fanfic, turn it into its own thing. So, and even then, it's very niche. It's very for a specific audience. So you have to understand what fan fiction is before you get into it. It's just like, what are those, when we use the term for adult gaming, it's basically visual novels. But it's half porn, half drama, half melodrama. There's all these mix of genres. So if you know what you're getting into, it's awesome. And your expectations are very narrow. So you're never going to be disappointed too. Well, you could. Obviously, you could be disappointed in anything. But if you know what you're getting into, and you know what you like, then you're going to have a great time. So if you like fan fiction, all the power to you.
Yeah, it's only when the original is objectively bad. Like The Legend of Korra or Ruby. That is when then the fanfiction exceeds in quality the original, because the people who were hoping for it to be good then start writing the thing in a way that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you think, hey, can't we just remake it with that stuff, with the fanfiction instead?
What ended up happening, I wouldn't say all the time with Star Trek, but the Star Trek novels of the 90s, or novellas rather, because Peter David was so prolific, and he was just doing everything. He was doing comic books, he was doing stories, he was doing plays, and he wrote some really decent novellas from Star Trek, at least by the premise alone. The execution...
Yeah, no wonder. That's because the show, especially Voyager and DS9, were held back by the producers.
Yeah, you could feel that even with the first 2 seasons of the original TNG, yeah. That was a vibe that someone was vying for control, and it wasn't always clear. All right. Frog Jupiter for the 5. Thank you, sir. I remember someone argued that Euros were revising history because they said the Romans were Euros when the real Euros were the savage Germanic tribes and Saxons.
You can forget about this.
Yeah, the Romans and the Germanic tribes were both Europeans, and the Saxons are is a Germanic tribe. There's even right now in Germany there are 3 states named Saxony: Saxony, Lower Saxony, and Saxony-Anhalt, which is the Anhalter. That's another tribe, and it's the stupidest name ever, because it's I don't know the original meaning. If you look at it from today's language, the name Anhaltiner means the guys who stop. The guys who stood still, like the guys who hit the brakes or something. Like, what the fuck? And yes, Slavic history is also part of Europe's history, and they are also Europeans, because the thing that people don't understand, and like this Birdman guy doesn't understand in how this actually works, just like all the hard racists, neo-Nazis don't understand this whole thing, is that when they say there is only one race, the human race. No, that's the species. Race is a term that either we use for dogs and cats and all of that nonsense, or for nations and peoples as a whole. That was at least the old use. So there was the German race, the French race, and so on, because we're all competing on this world for whatever you wanna think about. But if you want to go into this biological route, race doesn't really apply to humans. It would only apply to animals below humans. Because we have several terms for the thing that is the higher resolution category beneath species. For single cell organisms, for example, we would say strain. And for humans, the correct term that is the higher resolution beneath species would be tribe, because we are not just biological creatures, we are also cultural creatures. And the term tribe encompasses this the most, that we have both these things. We have this whole genotype phenotype thing where we drift close together, and we have the cultural aspect where we drift close together. This is where these stories happen, where a tribe accepts a foreigner into the tribe because he has proven himself to be worthy. And that's that. That doesn't mean that we have to go to hyper-tribalism, which is what fascism is, where it must be about only one tribe can survive and all the others must be subjugated or exterminated. That would be an actual definition for fascism as it plays out under Mussolini. Although Mussolini himself actually did try to remove the biological aspect in his Italian fascism, his original one, and just go with the cultural thing, which would be the socialist culture. Which in a way is the same thing the Soviets did, and the same thing the EU is now doing with trying to destroy all the cultural differences by imposing this European culture and the European man, and the globalists at large try to establish this global citizen. That's that. So, yeah, it's a big topic actually, and they deliberately use nonsense definitions in order to confuse everybody so that nobody catches on to what's actually going on. So that you can't fight it. Because what you don't understand, you can't fight.
All right. Where were we with her? I don't remember. I'm going to keep going.
Fanfiction.
Is illegal because fanfiction is not supposed to be for profit because of the copyright laws that it
No nonsense.
upon, and it puts
you can make anything for profit.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I wouldn't say it's the most legal thing in the world. In Japan, they let you do it because the creators are cool with it. It depends. It's very hard. You can make all kinds of T-shirts on Star Wars. Lucas is not going to come by and stop you. It really
There's some exceptions.
Yeah, exactly.
Where like the original inventor says, yeah, you can make whatever, but don't make it for profit. Like in the whole Toho community.
Right. Depends.
Where you have tons of cool stuff, and it's usually non-profit. They have conventions about one IP.
Danger, but they also do not get to profit from their own intellectual work. As a result of this, many people have.
Yeah,
I would rather say creative work.
And the whole thing about profiting from the IP is also the reason why the left currently hates J.K. Rowling so much, because anything that's good that gets made basically lines her pockets. Mm-hmm. So they love the IP, they hate the person, and they are torn because of that.
Been taking fanfiction, which is very frustrating when you're in the middle of it, but is their right to do so because you cannot buy bound fanfiction. But let's say
what
you do.
What did she whisper there?
Bound fanfiction. So I'm assuming that's hardcover or softcover. I don't know.
I don't see the problem.
It depends upon the IP and what how strict the writer is. There's lots of rules surrounding it. I get what she's saying, but why did she bring up fanfiction? I still don't know.
Maybe she's frustrated that hers is
frustrating.
Oh yeah, that her fanfiction isn't being sold. It's something like that.
When you're in the middle of it, but is their right to do so because you cannot buy bound fanfiction. But let's say you do want a bound copy of your favorite fan fiction featuring your favorite ship, and you want to have a beautiful cover for it.
You know what you could do, and especially since you're a woman and you like doing all this handy work and making things pretty, why don't you learn bookbinding? Make it yourself. With whatever fancy gay cover you want, because it's definitely going to be gay content.
I want to know where she's going, because this is getting way off topic.
How can you do that in an ethical way?
I don't care.
If you don't have someone who can make it for you, with our sponsor today, you can make it yourself on Skillshare.
Fuck this!
Oh god, it was a fucking plug!
Are you joking?
I don't fucking believe it. It was a fucking plug.
Are you all this build up? Oh, you can go to Skillshare and learn how to do it yourself. Wow.
And I helped her. Fucking hell.
Oh god. Just skip this. Bookbinding made easy? Are you joking?
Okay, woman, you got me. That's what 1 point for you. 13 for us.
Omega. What's the Omegaverse? Does anyone know what that is? I'm just gonna.
Wait a minute.
I'm just skipping. I don't know.
Didn't she just do a capitalism?
Yeah.
I am so disappointed.
Yeah, well, her whole title's capitalisms. Still going. This is a long ad.
Yeah, saves us some time. Oh my god. Seriously. There we go. Dune!
Who will our next oppressors be? Oh, joy. What a way to frame Dune.
Again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video.
No!
I guess let's pick up with Paul Atreides.
Atreides.
Why did the Emperor choose this path? And who will our next oppressors be?
Dune was published in 1965 by Frank Hubert about a futuristic feudal society
Herbert.
where teenage
Herbert, not Hubert. What the hell is wrong with you?
Maybe it's the
See, this is why your people didn't invent the wheel. You can't even read the name, and you are the bloody people who always complain about. And you have to actually pronounce the name like this. You have to say Kamala instead of Kamala.
Maybe.
Or Kamala.
Maybe she's thinking of Saint Hubert chicken because she's got that French accent.
Hubert. Huberto.
caught up in both a generational blood feud and a centuries-long political magical agenda that ends up with him becoming a violent messiah figure responsible for the death of billions.
You know what I hate about that scene here? This thing. So first he has absolutely no emotion here in the eyes, and the spice glow is laughable in the second movie. Especially with the shitty Chani actress. You can barely tell there's any blue in there, and she grew up on that planet. It should be a thick blue where you can't differentiate between the iris and the sclera anymore. But no. You could barely see any.
I'm still not sure whether Paul even is a white savior trope. He's a
Jewish savior.
Well, he's aware of his fate, and he knows that the Bene Gesserit were causing this for all this time, and they wanted to manipulate him, and he decides to get out of that struggle. So I don't know if he's fighting against his fate or because he's aware of his fate. He can see into the future.
At the time of the story, Paul is just doing what he does in order to survive on Arrakis.
Oh, that I get, yeah. But once he gets his visions and all that stuff, then it's like, okay, now I know what's going on. I could see what the problem is. I could solve it. Like he sort of breaks the mold.
Yeah, but he really only gets to that point after he's on the throne.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Because the first thing where he can see further in his visions is when he is in the spice trance where he poisoned himself, which they didn't cover at all in the bloody movie. He was just lying there, and then Chani woke him up, which is not how it happened. What happened while he was unconscious there is one, he convened with the primordial male energy that creates, which is some weird geometrical shape of squares that in light and darkness nonsense, which is what the Bene Gesserit cannot access, because they can only access the other half, the female force that takes. So there's a yin yang reference, which by the way is actually in the Old Testament if you know Hebrew, which most people don't. His name. His title, the Kwisatz Haderach, is also a Hebrew title, where we get another reference to the other religion, which means the one who leaps ahead, which references his ability of foresight, of premonition. Anyway, in his spice trance, what he sees is that the guild and all these other factions are currently in orbit over Arrakis. And he knows what they're all saying and what they all want and what they think. And makes his decisions on how to proceed down here on the surface based on that. That's how he can navigate his way to power, because he can see all the paths that lead to failure, and therefore sees the path that leads to what he wants. That's the idea, and that is also kind of how rational thought works, just without magic powers. By which you yourself usually put yourself into decision paralysis, because when you think too much about the future, you do see all of these failure states and directions, and don't find the path through all of that because you don't have a clearly defined goal, and you refuse to do what people who don't think as much do, which is just take the next fucking step. Because you know what the next step is. That's how you actually do it, without the Kwisatz Haderach nonsense.
All right. Here's Vladimir. We skipped. Thank you, sir, for the 5. I'm supposed to be the one bringing up unrelated topics. Damn it. Yeah, well, you did a pretty good job not doing that, so that's good this time. And 1 from Frog Jupiter. Then we'll keep going for 2. Thank you, sir. Omegaverse is basically furry cinematic universe. Really? I've never heard of it, and I'm surprised that was what she brought up. I'm glad we skipped that. So... yikes.
I don't want to know about
that.
Yep,
I'm full on that topic. Thank you, sir. That's good to know. Okay.
Becoming a violent messiah figure responsible for the death of billions. And people have been trying to decide what that
you can just read the other books, because the answer is very simple. The Bene Gesserit created Islam on instruction of the Jews from Secret Israel, the planet Secret Israel, and to wipe clean the universe of opposition. And after that, Islam is faded out, its culture destroyed because it has served its purpose. And then we go into super eugenics stories where you really don't want to know. If you know anything about the Skaven in Warhammer Fantasy, that's what the axolotl tanks are.
All right.
Take a step back. Let's discuss the authorial intent.
Why?
Even though it doesn't have to be the final word, I think it is important to say that Herbert was intentional in that he wanted to address ideas like leadership, religion, and power, and that he planned for audiences to see Paul as a sad tale of someone becoming so powerful and out of control.
But Paul is not out of control at all.
This never happens.
Paul is the most in control of everybody.
This never happens as far as I recall.
He even rejects the path ahead because he cannot bear the unbelievable horror it has to bring about humanity.
He's traumatized. This is later in his life by what happens as a result of his son being in charge, and when his wife dies, he's just everything's just destroyed from within him. So, yeah, no, he's never vengeful. Well, maybe he's a bit angry here and there, but he's never really vengeful.
He's mainly frustrated and a bit distraught. And that's why he becomes the prophet instead. Instead of he basically spoilers, he flies into a sandstorm and is never heard from again. And then this weird prophet shows up who doesn't have eyes, who's blind. But apparently walks as if he can see. Because of course Paul can see with his premonition skills. That's the whole joke. And he didn't want to turn into the God Emperor, the big worm thing. He knew he had to. But he rejected it because he didn't want to commit the super genocide. But his son had no problems doing that. The fucking asshole.
All right.
And because he wanted to also write a compelling book, not just a philosophy paper, there is therefore a nuance to Paul as a character, even though he is...
Oh no, if Frank Herbert had written a philosophy paper instead of Dune, you would call him many things that are all not good. His paper would have probably been hidden away somewhere where they keep the Talmuds from being translated.
Well, is Paul an anti-hero? I wouldn't go that far.
No, he's not an anti-hero. What the hell? How is he an anti-hero?
Yeah, I'm a little tired of this person.
It makes no sense.
We're going to go for one more minute because I don't know why she brought Dune back because...
I'd want to go to get to 20 minutes at least.
Oh, God.
Is the anti-hero of the series. He's only 15 when the book starts.
She doesn't know what words mean.
Yeah, I don't think she does.
Many of the things that impact him were decided before he was even born. He didn't ask his mother to choose his gender. He didn't...
What?
You mean sex, his biological sex.
What kind of a statement is this, you wacko?
Wait, no. Smud. In the case of Dune, that is actually true. Well, first, a child doesn't choose that in the first place. But Jessica was instructed. So the Bene Gesserit are able to decide the sex of the
Yeah,
embryo.
but that's not what she's saying.
But I know. But that's what she's conflating it from. Jessica was instructed by the Bene Gesserit to give Leto Atreides a daughter, because the generation after that should be the mother of the Kwisatz Haderach. However, Jessica, against the doctrines of the Bene Gesserit, fell in love with Leto Atreides, who wanted a son, so she bore him a son. But that has nothing to do with Paul's decision, because the child can't determine what he's gonna be, because there's no child that can choose anything. There's just an egg and a sperm. They're not one yet. And once the sperm gets into the egg, it's already decided, because there are male sperm and female sperm. But communists do not understand biology, because they slept during class or ran away from it out of fear. They're biophobes.
All right, anyway.
Communists are biophobes.
Here's Vladimir Dragunov again for the 2. Super Genocide sounds a dope metal album. Yes, it does.
Could be. No, it's not. It's not metal enough for
Germany.
No,
Entire
oh god!
country.
I just watched the whole series. What is wrong with me? Metalocalypse. What was the band? Deathclock.
Oh, cool.
It's not metal enough for Deathclock.
All right. Anyway, we're almost done with this person.
And asked to overthrow his father. He didn't ask for the Bene Gesserit
An axe.
to set up this Messiah myth so that he could use it and appropriate it in order.
What are you
What?
talking
No.
about?
I have to hear this again. She made massive mistakes here. Sorry.
Born. He didn't ask his mother to choose his gender. He didn't ask for the emperor to overthrow his father.
Well, of course not.
He didn't ask for the Bene Gesserit to set up this Messiah myth so that he could use it and appropriate it in order
Appropriate. You really love that word.
to become powerful.
That's just you being born into life. That happened before you were born. Like, what do you think? If he could decide all these things before he was born, then all these other people wouldn't have any decisions about existence, about the lives they lead. Do you understand that?
I'm not sure where she's going with this, because none of this is in the story that he had any control over. And
Yeah, this shows you the mindset of the socialist who thinks that I'm oppressed because I had no making in the decisions of the world and life I get to be spawned into. Because the socialists, they feel oppressed because they weren't involved in the character creation process. Like as if there's a big screen before you get conceived, like your soul, and you click on all these things like in Dragon Age Veilguard, where you choose all your appearance and what sex you are and your background story and everything, and then you hit the start button and then you get born. No, that's not how it happens, and that's the problem of the socialists. They want an actual character creation process.
A path has been laid.
But he does use these tools. He uses people's faith. He uses the powers that he's been taught. He uses all the privileges that he has.
Okay, this is dumb.
And why shouldn't he?
This is dumb. Come on. This is so stupid.
He uses
Of course it
everything
is.
that is at his disposal. It doesn't mean that those were like the...
This is like saying he uses the tools he's been
They
given.
were
Yeah,
tools.
he needs to.
Oh, I see the problem. She's frustrated that she fails to use the tools at the disposal of her life.
This is... I can't believe we're accusing Paul of using means to survive and cause people to revolt for a better life so he can help them. This is so stupid.
No, of course he shouldn't, because he has a light skin color.
No, but this whole frame of reference is just stupid. Why would you describe Paul? Why would you describe his story this way? How dare he use other people to get what he wants to help them?
Yeah, because smart. Because it's a racist worldview. If the skin colors were reversed, she would be all for it and talk about the relentless struggle of this immensely resourceful character. It only depends on the skin color.
Well, yeah, but we could talk about other stories with Dances with Wolves where he helps the Indians by trading with. Oh, well, how dare he use the flintlock to trade with the Indians for food? It's like,
if it was a black African, she would be all for it. It's that simple.
Like, this is so childish.
Yes, exactly. The entire ideology is. All of its strategies and tactics and behaviors are childish.
Anyway, I think we can stop there. This is not going to go anywhere positive. We're not going to learn anything from her.
Why do you ever think that any of the videos we watched would lead to anywhere positive?
She spent 13 minutes going on about random references to the white savior trope in history to make some sort of argument. Like, this is all bad. And I'm like,
yeah, that's all framing and to create guilt by association so that she can now say that Dune is actually bad. Please don't look at the Jewish references.
Okay. Anyway, I have things to do that do not involve listening to this lady that I think are healthier for everyone involved. Let's see if we have some memes. Because, holy hell.
Man, we could have so much fun here.
I know. If you want to cover it tomorrow, we can do the rest, but I can only take so much.
Oh, yeah, really?
Yeah, I don't mind. If you guys want to do it tomorrow, that's up to you. We can do it.
Okay.
March, what is this? 20? Yep. Okay, here we go. New memes. What do we got? Okay, officer help. There's a bunch of kids running a train on a young girl down here. Oh, sweet mother of mercy. Okay. The fear demon is terrified. Flash Gordon #1. Really? That's pretty nice. Cover. Oh, no. Don't make fun of the blonde. That's an insult to blondes. Those are different different kind of...
Natural blondes are smart. It's the one who dye their hair blonde that are dumb.
Yeah, I met quite a few blondes. They're not all dumb, so...
Yeah, there were studies on that. It's the ones who dye their hair blonde that are lower IQ. The ones who are naturally blonde are naturally higher IQ. It's hilarious.
Yeah. So we're at 17 minutes and 39 seconds. If you guys want to cover this tomorrow, I guess we could do it if you're up for it. I'm going to go download a $10 Canadian copy of XCOM 2 with 4 DLCs, which I've been waiting.
A Canadian copy? What is it? Does the game apologize to you?
Canadian dollars. I'm sure it's different in other countries depending on the exchange rate. But I saw I think I linked it in the casual chat. But I was about to buy it like 2 years ago when Steam had their sale for like $1, but it didn't have War of the Chosen. And I was like, well, what's the point? I'm not gonna play XCOM for $1 just because it's XCOM 2. I want the full thing. War of the Chosen was like $30. I'm like, oh, that's not really a deal. Now it's the whole thing is $10. I'm like, that's a good deal. So,
by the way, under the line, this all means she is fine with the Harkonnen ruling over the Fremen. So she wants the actual horrible white evil tyrants that exploit and kill people for fun and torture them for fun. To keep ruling over the brownish desert people.
Yeah, but the magical savior guy who actually helps the Fremen who are being controlled.
Getting out of oppression is shit if it's done by a light-skinned person.
And because he uses their culture to coerce them into helping him. Yeah, he's a horrible, horrible guy. Oh, enough crap for one day. Thanks, guys. Thank you for the time. We'll cover the rest of it tomorrow. This is a Maggie May fish in the making. I swear it is.
Yes. Tomorrow, more Harkonnen propaganda.
Oh, boy. I can't wait to rip and tear and pull out the heart plugs of everyone I see. That'd be great. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Have yourself a great evening and good night.